Hi, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. My name is Molly Dickinson from EXL Health, and I'll be your moderator today. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, feel free to include them within the Q&A function, and we'll address them during the Q&A portion at the end of the session. Today, our topic is the black box versus white box model for payment integrity and how a modular approach can better meet your payment integrity business objectives. First, I'm very excited to introduce our speakers. Tina Azar, market leader at EXL Health, has over 22 years of experience in the healthcare industry, focusing on payment integrity and provider strategies. At EXL Health, Tina works to ensure that EXL's products and services drive the most significant value while servicing customers' needs. Using strategic planning and thought leadership, her primary focus is analyzing healthcare insights and trends and then designing and executing comprehensive and innovative programs. Erica O'Connor, Senior Assistant Vice President at EXL Health, is a highly experienced professional with a diverse and extensive background in payment integrity programs. At EXL Health, Erica brings her many years of Blues experience and unique perspective when solving complex business challenges for her clients. Within her 22 years of healthcare experience, Erica managed the claims payment integrity team for a large health plan, where she built the internal payment integrity programs, managed vendors, and created efficient technology solutions. And with that, I'll turn it over to Tina.
Thank you, Molly. So Erica and I have been in payment integrity for quite some time now. And I think we both thought that by now payment integrity would be much smaller and many of the high error rates that we've experienced through the years would dissipate. But we know that we're really seeing payment integrity really hit a new plateau, and then it's worth about $362 billion. We also know that CMS recently reported that we're seeing error rates on claims right now right over 6%, which represents about $25 billion annually. So today, nearly every industry is facing some level of disruption post-pandemic. And because of the anticipated decline in supplemental funding, along with the expected increase in usage, healthcare is no exception. Shifting payer requirements and continuous regulatory changes, along with coding updates and emerging and evolving payment methods, contribute to the complexity and increase the administrative burden on payers today, which just continues to drive up those costs for those providers. Our payers, providers, and enrollees. Now, if you need a reminder on how complex the U.S. healthcare system is, try explaining the life cycle of a claim to a foreigner. The COVID pandemic has exacerbated potential errors. New medical billing employees may have received very quick training. It may be a virtual training setting. They may be working remotely with very little interaction or oversight. And billing departments, as well as payer claim teams, are really understaffed right now. And a claims life cycle is only getting more complex year over year. The Medical Group Management Association estimates that the average cost to work a claim right now is about $25 per touch. And so it's not uncommon for a claim to be touched multiple times as it goes through a payer system, which is really contributing to errors and administrative burdens. So now the lens on healthcare payment integrity has never been more important, and the payer program managers are now tasked with achieving more with less time, less resources, less support, and less funding. When we talk about some of those challenges that they're facing today, is that they're finding their systems and workflows have limitations and fail to really accurately manage the inventories. We're also finding that providers are pushing back now and reluctant to participate in those audit programs. We're also seeing an explosive growth of telehealth, remote care, as well as home health, which are all areas that are pretty new to the industry and unregulated. We're seeing a scarce internal resource and resource gaps. I've heard of entire teams really leaving the sector, so it's really left a very large void. We're also noting that there's an inability to really precisely target billing and adjudication errors. and limited visibility into the performance or ROIs of programs. You couple that with governmental regulations as well as legislation. Really, payment integrity directors, managers within payer groups are really traveling an uphill battle. So pretty excited to turn it over to Erica, where she's going to talk about some of those challenges to stay innovative as we focus on the black box, white box model. Erica?
Yeah, thanks, Tina. So the items Tina just touched on in the previous slide illustrate the multitude of issues that we face each and every day with payment integrity and claims. The evolution of the claims payment cycle consumes our time and resources constantly. And how can we challenge ourselves to initiate solutions with the tools and the data that we have available? We're all asked to do more with less. And in what ways can we confront these limitations and try to think outside the box? The industry trend has been to move from post-pay recoveries to prepay solutions, but we have system limitations that hold us back. We want to pay things right the first time and reduce or eliminate that administrative burden that we feel. We could be better spending our time ideating and creating new and exciting things if we had fill in the blank X, or I could do X better. So with the current landscape today in a typical payment integrity division, you have mostly post-pay, maybe some prepay solutions, and a multi-vendor approach to solving all the types of overpayments. This can be a lot to manage between contracting, soliciting for RFP or RFI, overseeing recovery vendors, and as well as trying to reduce vendor findings by internalizing as much as possible. This is all on top of governing all your regulations, contracts, and recovery goals that you have for the year. All these initiatives lead up to one thing, the dollar. Everyone is tasked with getting as much savings as possible or trying to cost avoid as much as possible. And when we think about the standard payment integrity approach today, we think of it as a black box solution. Your vendors come in, they provide an out-of-the-box solution, and savings are outputted. Day in and day out, you send data, they spit out the savings. But how much time is spent on identifying root cause of those savings or seeing if a system fix could be put into place to avoid it? Where's the partnership from the vendor in solutioning rather than reacting with data? And who has time to investigate each recovery to see if it's a system error, provider issue, or just plain aberrant billing?
So at EXL, we take a little bit more of a holistic approach and what we're calling the white box model. We start with human ingenuity, which is the catalyst to solve your complex payment integrity programs. We have a very large focus on freeing up administrative burdens so that your team can get back to their expertise. And when a payer strategy changes, we are agile enough to be able to change with it, meaning the daunting cycle of plugging and unplugging vendors to solve the symptoms of bad billing and payment behaviors is gone. We do this by really studying what went wrong with that claim in the life cycle and how EXL can help the payer to prevent the claim in future. While EXL can serve a black box model, we certainly do so every day, it really does not offer any insights or ability for a payer to leverage where trends and errors occur and how to solve for them long term. EXL really is a payment integrity partner, not just an audit and recovery vendor. I'm still noting what I see as an emerging trend is that payer fatigue around the process of securing a PI vendor. So that exercise is pretty taxing, right? We're talking about the cycle of RFPs, RFIs, assessment work, procurement work, vendor restacks, and then just getting to the end of a 3-year contract and having to do it all over again. It is a really taxing thing, not only to your staff, but to the savings programs that you've already administered as well. We have a lot more flexibility in our approach that moves away from traditional audit and recovery cycles. We apply a modular approach to understand where a payer's strategies are, where their needs are, and where their gaps are. And whether it's a platform upgrade or replacement, a software development, analytics, or even people or processes, staffing augmentation, or thought leadership. It means that you don't have to abandon your existing investments and resources for what you've worked to already internalize or what you've already secured. It allows you to be nimble and innovative when you're thinking about reducing contingent-based vendor spend. And in the end, our buyers have ownership over their program and their results. And it allows us to collectively focus on how to turn the biggest cost drivers into revenue centers on behalf of a payer. How do we do that? Well, we look to move beyond traditional audit and recovery methodologies and mentalities. We start by delivering on our promise for human ingenuity to solve those complex problems. We have curated a staff of experts that are able to really look at inventories as well as systems to be able to drive where your best opportunities for efficiency gains remain. We use the right technology and the right resources to support every stage of the payment integrity's life cycle. We use smart, scalable, prepay and post-pay execution with minimum disruption into the health plans as well as their provider community. We spend a lot of time and resources working with that provider community. We have found at large, they want to get it right, and helping them do so is part of the task that we assign ourselves. We work with operations that are enriched with real intelligence, using precise analytics, looking at embedding real intelligence as well as machine learning to really improve our NPS scores. And we have a big data platform that allows us to quickly ingest very large segments of data. And then in addition to that, we have a continuous cycle of learning and smart learning that allows us to take those trends we see in a post-pay world and really lift and shift them into a prepay, where we can start to find out where within the life cycle of a claim that particular event went awry and caused a billing error. From our value-add capacity services and advanced technology and analytics and insights that offer recommended outcomes, we help to solve complex problems and drive meaningful outcomes for the following areas. We look at prepay as well as postpay. Obviously, a very large push this year, pushing into prepay. In that arena, we do clinical claims auditing for inpatient, outpatient, ancillary, pharmacy, OPL, and subrogation. We do preemptive solutions. We also do audit workflow evaluations. We look at payment capacity services, looking at coding reviews, claim auditing, as well as appeals management and special investigation units. Payment analytics and data mining, we're looking at provider billing analysis, provider abrasion analysis, provider intervention and education. We look at contract compliance as well as fraud, waste, and abuse. And lastly, we look at coordination of benefits. And then we top that off with really focusing on digital transformations, looking at payment policy management, digital enable of PI operations, selection analysis, as well as data science expertise. Turn it over to Erica to run through a few case studies that will demonstrate how we think about that white box today.
Sure. I want to talk about a few ways EXL has handled some unique situations that payers have presented to us. So in truly listening to the payer and understanding what their challenges are, we can solution together to best fit their needs at the time. In this particular example, you did not find the standard black box approach in payment integrity challenges. We spoke to the customer about where their pain points were, and in conversation discovered their biggest threat to not meeting their recovery goals this year was a very large backlog that had been a pain point for years. We quickly fast-tracked on a solution to assist the payer with achieving their goals. And together we stood up a solution in 30 days. And that solution was so successful that they have extended the project through the full year. Because of the realized success and immediate shift in inventory, they reached out to supplement for another area needing help through the end of the year as well. This is a great example of leading solution together with the client. In this second example, we showcase how a client with uncertainties in solutioning came to us with an idea. How many times have you asked your vendors for fresh, new solutions in the recovery space? Or have you asked, what's new in the industry? What might we be missing that's out there? Or perhaps you have an idea, but aren't sure where to go with it or how to solve for it. And in listening to the client's specific experience, we gathered the team to brainstorm on how we could apply a solution. And through our team of experts in the field, along with data technology, we worked together with the client to solve for their ask. When you think of going to RFP, RFI for a part of your payment integrity business, sometimes you might know exactly what you need, or you think you do. And in response to RFP or RFI, do you find the same solutions and contractual languages applied over and over? How many respond with numerous options to meet your needs? In this specific example, we listened to the client's various needs and provided a unique approach which consisted of a menu of options. Each option provided showcased the solution, timeline, and funding necessary to stand it up. Many times payers are put in precarious situations where they must choose between solutions or vendors because of cost. In the black box model, you typically receive the same standard vendor responses and choose either the lowest cost vendor or the one that promises the most savings. In thinking of your unique situations that you're challenged with today, how are your current initiatives thinking outside of the box to continue forward with your goals? As you can see in this case study, we did more than just the black box approach of data in, savings out. After the savings were realized on the post-pay recoveries, we took a step further and deep dived to identify the root cause of the overpayments. This armed the payer with the information necessary to stop the bleed. There's a lot of noise in the industry around administrative burden of post-pay solutions, as well as medical record retrieval. And in this particular example, we have succeeded in both areas by performing the audit on a prepay basis, as well as increasing the hit rate to conduct a more viable review for the client. In the typical black box solution offerings, you can experience a stagnant order of delivery. Your savings may trend a little upward, or the hit rate may increase a few points, but overall the program is standard to what was implemented perhaps even years ago. As you can see, this innovative approach here led to great success across many aspects for the client.
So I think I'm going to just scooch back just for a second, Erica, because I think you made a really good point, right? And that a couple challenges that I'm finding today with payers is they are coming to the table with what I would call internal expertise, that they have formulated bandwidth resources, maybe to tackle a segment of cost containment or payment integrity. And as they think about where their gaps are in payment integrity when they approach payment PI vendors, they're finding, it's all-in solution. And so there's this need for them to really let go of the work and the expertise that they've already crafted. And that's a hard thing, right? Because they've certainly saved the organization cost and being able to drive to those savings internally. We don't necessarily feel like that's something they need to set down. I like to say in payment integrity, there's more than enough dirty room to clean, right? And if they own a segment of something that they have expertise to be able to do, what we like to do is to really make sure that we can offer an opportunity to act as an extension to their existing processes, whether it be just the administrative tail end or through the recovery process, or to really just say, you know what, that's a segment of claims that we're not going to be reviewing and we've taken off the table and we're going to go focus on other areas. And we have the ability to do that. And so I would say within the white box model, we're not really looking at kind of the traditional four corners of a PI shop, but really have the ability to be agile in how we think about where we can drive impact and where are areas that we recognize the payer is pretty attached to and we're going to stay far away from. It's also possible that they have an issue with expressing ROI within their leadership pool, right? You might have a PI manager that knows that there is a segment out there that really is a runaway cost right now for the industry. But being able to articulate ROI on that, COVID made us kind of silent around a lot of those metrics. We're very lumpy right now and what's happened with claims over the last 18 months. And so looking at that from a metrics perspective to try to understand where trends are is a tricky thing. And so trying to quantify what is the ROI outside of that is even more difficult. So I am finding where PI buyers are struggling with that. And that's something that we can help with, right? We have a lot of boots on the ground that have the ability to look at a very large data set and understand what is attributable to post-pandemic kind of outputs and what is true ROI that a payer would expect to see for an audit module. I would also say one of the things that we are coming across is that there are some smaller modules of a PI program that we're seeing a lot of vendors start to shy away from and not carry forward. And I would say that is your high volume, low dollar claims where collectively there's definitely a value add for a payer. But you really need an optimized, efficient program to be able to drive savings on those claims. And so in areas like home health, which is the largest and most fast emerging segment of care in this country, there's simply not enough vendors doing that work today. And we do. We have a very robust home health shop that really focuses on looking at those claims. And so it could be that you have an entire payment integrity program, but you're missing elements such as that, RUGs and SNFs and all of those smaller audit modules. We certainly have found our ability to be able to do those and to do those efficiently as well. So just reiterating your point here, Erica, where you don't have to adopt one box over another. In fact, most of our customers are finding where it's a hybrid approach, and in that it makes sense. And I think probably also most notably is as a customer starts to really internalize their strategies, and we're finding where they're able to extend even more resources internally to be able to accommodate that audit work and where they want to go with it. We have an opportunity to stand back and say, okay, what are we tackling next? Where are we going next? And where can we help you with the next nugget? And so as quickly as we have the ability to ramp up and do that kind of work, we also have the ability to shift and lift those resources while you work to kind of stand on your own feet and focus on your areas. Erica,
absolutely, and that's a good point. In this specific example, where we offered multiple roadmaps to solution, we listened and adjusted where they were at today. So they had some in-house staff that were performing some review. So we offered some additional help with that. We offered tools, systems, 3 different options for them with what they had in-house today to help support and expand that for them, not take that away from them.
Right.
Yeah.
Eric, I want to go back to another example you gave. When you talked about right now, I'm seeing and also real ask out in the marketplace. We're getting shoulder tapped a lot to help with backlogs. And those backlogs are taking a lot of different forms, right? Whether it be physician claims or it could be even an appeals work, right? Where let's just face it, the clinicians of the industry were quite busy over the last 24 months, right? And so typically when you're talking about second level appeals, you're talking about clinician support to be able to help navigate that. And that wasn't really the industry's focus over the last 24 months. So that's another area that I'm seeing a pretty large backlog. Can you walk me through what has been your experience with EXL and how we start to tackle backlogs?
Absolutely. Yeah, that really has been a pain point with what's happened over the last couple of years with COVID, staffing issues, things kind of being left on the back burner as everyone was focusing on COVID and going remote, all of those things. So now I think clients, payers are finding themselves in a little bit of hurt and needing some help with that. So again, just really understood where the client is at, what they're needing to help lift and shift so that they can better focus on the things that their staff has skill set and expertise on, and we can pick up the pieces of other work that may, not need as much expertise in those areas, where it's just literally getting through some of this backlog work. So we apply staff and solution to that to help get you back up to where you need to be to maintain going forward. And again, to reach some of those goals that may have fallen off track over the last couple of years because of COVID. So there have been a couple of unique situations that we've helped to solve for. And so, we're willing to, again, work and partner with you in order to come up with the best solution with what works for the client today.
Yep, that makes sense. That makes sense. And then when we talk about some of the other points of pain that are out there today, I almost see it almost a mirrored event, right? If we are seeing where inside the provider house, their billing expertise, right, has shifted maybe to at home, as we talked earlier on, right? Shifted at home, quickly trained, very little insight. I'm also finding on the very tail end of it, right, where those claims are adjusted in an audit recovery scenario, there's also a very large gap in staffing in that arena as well. And so do we have the ability, does EXL have the ability to really step in and help with the tail end of that audit process? And can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. So we have some solutions for automating some of those things, technology solutions that have been going on for years. It's just getting the right technology and people connected in order to help with some of those. So success in that area, again, teaming the right people with the system and understanding what the client's needs are, testing those things out with them and assuring that we're hitting the marks on what the adjustment needs to look like and getting through backlog much quicker than you would with manual staff as you did historically.
Yep, that's great. That's great. All right. Well, I will just close this out. Any more comments on these last case studies that you have here? I know one thing I saw recently is that we're starting to get right back in the facilities, right? So those facility audits on those hospital bill audits is a segment of work that seems to be coming back online for the industry. Those are pretty high dollar claims, I would imagine.
Yes, absolutely. Things are starting to open back up. And I just add one additional note of experience that just occurred this week. So when we talk about, working with the client and, being part of this cost avoidance or, avoiding all the administrative burdens that we have. In one particular instance, we had a provider reach out to us for one of our clients saying, teach me. I want to learn. If I'm coding incorrectly, tell me what I'm doing wrong, because I'm receiving these audits and they're being recovered, and it's been a vicious cycle for me. So I want to learn. Can you help me? So we had one of our experts jump on the phone, review some cases, and just talk that individual through. So again, willing to help in that space, rather than just continuing the cycle of, overpayments identified, money taken back, and, all the administrative costs tied to that. So that was a recent example where we worked with someone that was really willing to learn and wanted to work together with us and the client to help fix the coding that she was doing.
Yep, I absolutely see that, where provider education is, we're just getting called upon to do that more often. And, I would say it's probably about equal, right? Where it's the provider actually calling and saying, hey, got a new group here. You guys have to help me. You guys are mastery level coders, like help me articulate what's appropriate here. And, we have a willingness and a want to really get in and help do that. And that's not necessarily something that we are contracted for, but we understand the more that we can work with those health systems, especially those large health systems, to get it right, the better the cost containment programs are. In another area, it almost feels like we're starting over in some of these areas, right? Post-pandemic, coming online, brand new set of faces, brand new set of training, brand new set of conversations to happen. So it feels like a little bit of a reboot. But another area that I'm finding we're getting called upon to is with the policies and being able to help payers write policies that give teeth to the audits that are appropriate. Having an appeal occur is one thing. Having an appeal occur, a secondary level appeal occur, just to turn that claim over is a painful exercise, right? So we really want to make sure that we're looking at those contracts and how those policies read so that you have the best case scenario when navigating through those appeals. It's like that's another area that's emerged for us. And lastly, I think I would call out, this word keeps surfacing as of late, which is SIU. And I truly believe it's because the industry is really, we talked about that ebb and flow and that lumpiness of how claims are being paid today and what we're seeing as far as trends. And it's really hard to gauge. And I would say SIU work is really where the rubber hits the road. We're doing a lot of investigation work, or we're seeing a lot of investigation work, really trying to understand where those trends lie. And I would say, expertise in investigations is typically housed within a payer. But one thing that we can do is really help with the back and front end of those SIU shops to really help create efficiencies in selections, as well as closing out the administrative work at the end, ensuring that you have actualized savings on the other side of those events. So I also see that as a trend that's recently emerging. Erica, what are some of the points of pain? You've sat in the PI, you've owned a PI program. What's the kind of the internal organization loudest noise that you feel like our buyers are looking to combat right now?
Sure. I would say in my recent experience, there was, a lot of provider noise in the industry. The big bad payers were taking back a lot of money and, sometimes felt they were unfair overpayments or, may have disagreed with policy. So there was a lot of work done recently with our network team and just working through with provider what we were seeing on our side, where we were seeing significant dollars recovered, per certain concepts. Sometimes helped identify maybe, somebody that was coding incorrectly in their team that they had no idea. So just bringing to light things like that. But it seemed to be that constant battle with providers back and forth around our recoveries that we were hitting them with, versus what maybe hadn't been identified in the past. So, you start taking big dollars away, that brings a lot of attention to payment integrity, new initiatives and concepts. You add new vendors on that maybe you didn't have recovery on before on those programs. So just kind of stirs things up a bit in that space. And then secondly, I would say probably being on the other side of running a PI shop was really around the vendor management piece. I mean, you had 8, 9, 10, 17 vendors in some of the plans that I talk to, and just really managing each of those vendors and then, managing the cost. It can be a lot when you have multiple vendors in different programs. You have multiple stacks of vendors for a program. So that can be just very resource time consuming as well in having all those vendors in your PI space.
Well, very helpful. Well, I would say, we are here at EXL, we're really enthusiastic for an opportunity to really explore additional opportunities within your payment integrity programs and in your visions to understand how we can partner with you. A few things I would probably have the payers that are here with us today. First of all, thank you so much for attending. I really am grateful for the time that we get to have a dialogue. But I would say don't settle for the same vendors on a one-size-fits-all approach. Think of it more in a modular form, right, that allows you a little bit more agility. And then the healthcare complexity is going to continue to be a pain point, and implementing those right tools is going to become critical. I think Erica gives us a good reminder. Sometimes the audit work is the easy part, right? The management of the vendors, the management of the noise from the providers, all of those things also should be weighed, right? And you want to make sure that the partner you're selecting is willing to stand on the front lines in those types of conversations. And then I would also say digital solutions, build a program that's scalable. Take the time to invest in something that is going to grow as your program grows with you. And there are a lot of decisions and opportunities and options when it comes to how to do that correctly. And so partner with somebody that can give you some suggestions and guidance on how to get that done correctly. But we absolutely over here at EXL look forward to working with all of you and hearing what your challenges are and how we can find our synergies to be able to help.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tina and Erica. That was fantastic information. We will now start our Q&A portion of the session. If you do have any questions, please submit them within the portal feature. There's a little Q&A chat box down below. Look and see what we have. Our first question, what is the first step in determining the best approach for a payment integrity service delivery model?
Step one, right? I don't know, Erica, you want to take a shot at this one?
Sure. Yeah, so if you're looking to expand and grow, get into the PI space, I think really it's just analyzing what you have today. If you have any programs in place today, putting down the numbers, the programs and the numbers that you have. And then, next step would be to internalize and invest in those programs that you have within your resource and skill set today. And then the second piece would be where you might have gaps or not have the skill, resource, and or it doesn't make sense to invest in that space. Start looking into what vendors have to offer. And when you're looking at the vendors, as Tina noted, you think about capabilities. So a lot of us had some constraints with systems and the different tools that we had in our claims adjudication processes today. So how can that vendor help marry with your current capabilities and systems and resources that you have today to bring the best solution and savings? People usually get a large savings dollar tied to their PA unit. So ensuring that you're able to hit the mark with savings as well.
Yep. And I think EXL approaches it from really kind of looking at your world today, a payer's world today, and where we would possibly suggest that there's some gaps that are low-hanging fruit gaps that we could really help address pretty immediately. And then also looking at staffing constraints and where there might be an opportunity to really expand a program, not by necessarily adopting more modules or adopting more audit types, but just doing what you do with more efficiencies and a wider net. So typically what EXL likes to do is to come in and really assess your existing program. That typically is us sitting down and really workflowing that out with you, and hearing what your strategies are and what you would like to drive towards. And then advising, does that feel like that is a 1 year, 2 year, or 3 year plan, right? We really like to help say, that's a really good trajectory. It's going to put you here in 3 years. Is that really what you're hoping to achieve? And so it's a pretty interactive session that we do. From there, we do an assessment where we're really looking at your paid claim files to understand, what is the value that we would see net out of the programs that we're suggesting, and then help you derive at an ROI that should be shareable within your internal team members. So, typically is filled with a lot of different options, because again, not necessarily all vendors are exposed to all the internal workings of a payer. And so we want to make sure that we're giving you options to be able to decide. Good question, though.
Another question. My company has similar challenges that you described and are slow to change. How would you recommend that we transition to a better future?
Yeah, it does feel like there's this kind of collective pause out there on the industry still, right? Where it feels like at large, payer leadership knows where they want to go and what they're looking to drive towards. But there, it still feels like there's a little bit of an unknown. And I would say start small. Don't feel that you have to unplug and plug into something that's completely an overhaul. Find a way to really kind of walk through your roadmap, and pick a PI partner that's willing to do that with you, right? That is willing to really start where you stand, and lean on the initiatives that you're hoping to drive, and is not overpressurized to be into this robust state of contract with you right out of the gate. I would be leery of that. I think a modular approach is a smart approach. Fail fast, right, and move on. And I think there's some truth to that, where a PI buyer gets a lot of internal leads, right, where they're hearing from maybe their clinician teams or from even their state plans to say, hey, we think that this is a potential error. Are you looking at this? And I think that is a really taxing, time-sensitive issue. And you want a PI partner that's able to not only say, this is our focus, but you want a PI partner that's able to say, this is not our focus, and here's why. And it shouldn't be yours, and here's why. And I think that's also equally important, so that you are chasing down the right carrots.
And I would just add, to Ellie's comment there, I can feel your pain. So when you say, similar challenges and slow to change, I can completely empathize with that. And I would say, keep going to find someone that will listen. It took me multiple conversations to get someone's attention that would listen and understand what I was pointing out, where we had some opportunity. And secondly, finding a partner vendor that is willing to do the proof of concept. If you have a proof of concept and can show dollars on paper of, some current cases that could result in recovery, I think that's huge too, to have that in your hands and bring forth, like Tina said, if you start small, even with one program, and have someone take a look at the data and what they can find, that can usually start turning some heads as well.
Yep, exactly. And I would also say, as payers have post-pandemic struggled with staffing, so have vendors. Not a bad idea to get a paid claim analysis done. That's something that we do We do that for free, but we do that to really help either give you a head nod and say, yep, you've got it covered. You've got a really good safety net around your cost containment strategies, or to say, yeah, you've got 70% of it covered, but here's where we see a gap. And I think it's important to note that staffing shortages in healthcare are pretty widespread. And so I would absolutely be looking at multiple vendors and understanding, every single one of them has their own specialty. And do you have the specialties of that particular vendor lined up appropriately?
Wonderful. Our next question, does EXL Health only do payment integrity?
That's a good question. Erica, why don't you take this one?
I would say no, we don't only do payment integrity. Payment integrity is one division of EXL. We have many solutions around analytics, technology, data, many different programs of payment integrity that we've talked about as well. So there are a lot of opportunities to help solutions. So I would say back, bring forward what your pain points are across your business, and EXL would see how we can help solve across our many areas of solution.
Yep, and I would echo that. I would say EXL at times has been America's best kept secret. And a lot of that is because of the white box model, right? Where we sit behind a payer's branding on a lot of the work that we perform, which is a great thing. It allows us to move forward in true partnership with the payers that we serve. But in addition to that, it also has led to maybe not the industry being fully aware of how robust our services are. We do risk adjustment. We do data analytics. We do clinical work. We do UNM. There's truly not a facet of the healthcare system that we don't help support in some capacity. And I love it when we have, 300 of us on a call together and we're really working to solve a problem. And that would include, we do offshore and onshore. But when we're working to solve a problem, everybody says, no, we absolutely don't do that. And all of a sudden you hear somebody way in the back and go, oh yeah, we do it here. And that's really cool because it just shows how nimble we are, right? That we have those resources within our quilt and are able to pull them out and serve a need when a need appears. And so I really do like that about EXL.
And this might be our last question. So if anyone else has a question to submit, now is the time. And this last question I know is one of Tina's favorite topics. So I'm assuming this will be to her. Tina, are there any upcoming regulatory changes that may impact my PI business?
Oh, goodness. Maybe you should pull up a chair on that one, right? Yeah, there are some very serious advantages actually right now on behalf of payers. And the most notable, definitely no surprise billing. If you don't have a payment integrity solution that's wrapped around that, I would absolutely look for you to start making phone calls. That is something that you should definitely be able to see the advantage to, as well as your members, and something that should be very much publicized in your brochure work out to your member pool. And so that absolutely has an impact, not only for providers, but payers as well. I would also say price transparency. I think there's been a lot of back and forth on price transparency. I personally have led a lot of seminars on it. But I also see a real want through both providers and payers to work to get that right as well. And so I'm starting to see where the industry at large was pretty slow to adopt that, but it seems like there's some emerging adoption that I'm pretty excited for. It's legislation that's well overdue. And, I like to say here at EXL, our goal is to really cure payment integrity, the need for payment integrity. And I see both of those pieces of legislation, the first stepping stones that are going to enable us to do so as a country. So I would absolutely, if you don't have SMEs or expertise around that, I would be securing them for that dialogue.
Wonderful. And it looks like that is it for questions today. So I do want to thank everyone for attending today, and I do want to thank our two expert presenters. If you do have interest to discuss these topics further, learn more about our solutions, absolutely reach out. Both Tina and Erica would love to speak with you. This is obviously one of their favorite topics, and they're happy for any further discussion. So their contact information is right there, and absolutely don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.